Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Do not know all the answers to the questions about reality. Do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden. As a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm the Void.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
All broadcasting from the high desert here at the foothills of Sedona from Fringe FM Studios. This is Lighting the Void, and you're listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting. I'm your host, Joe Roop. This is a live broadcast here tonight, Thursday, June 3rd, 2021 on into the 4th. And second day here in the new studios. So it's good to be back. It's good to be live. And I got my brother from another mother, Rohan, here with me, and we're going to go deep into the void tonight. If this is your first time listening to the broadcast, this is an eclectic show. We like to talk about all things when it comes to consciousness, human potential, truth, God, love, and the weird and the strange. And it is really good to be back. Rohan, thanks for coming on, brother. You're becoming like a regular. You got fans now. You know that?
Fans.
There's Rohan fans out there, right?
Rohan rolls off the tongue nice. Rohan fans.
Yeah, Rohan fans for sure. It does. Well, we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects tonight: magic with a K, the occult. It is my favorite subject. I'm a little bit more old school and traditional occultist, but chaos magic is something that I really love to talk about. And Andrea Vitimus is here with us, and this guy he knows his stuff, and I'm really excited about this show. Our producer, Pacho, did a real good job by getting him on the broadcast, and it's, I don't know if you guys know much about chaos magic. Of course, we've had Gordon White and other people on the broadcast too, but we'll get into that. We'll get into it. It's a more modern version, and it's effective. I would say as far as getting results, it's very effective, but magic is real, y'all. Y'all know that. So we're going to get into it. I want to thank some of the new patrons for joining. We had several new patrons sign up. And if you sign up for the first package is just like the $5 support package. But if you get the $10 Deep Void package or higher, then you get the archives that are commercial free. Over 700 episodes. Plus, we're going to be launching the mindful meditations into the Deep Void. You're going to hear my voice and some music that's produced by both me and Rohan. And we're going to take you through a whole traditional magical initiatic course, but all through the mind. And, you know, later you might just want to get an altar box to do some of this magic with, because I believe you can do this stuff in the mind. Although having ritual tools and stuff is cool, I really think and believe in the power of the mind. Don't you, Rohan? What do you think? The mind is like the cosmic weapon of it. It's the biggest thing in the world. It's big. It's everything.
Well, yeah. It's like a bit, I think of the mind as a bit like, you know, you get the T-1000 in the Terminator. It can shapeshift into anything, but it can't make parts. But our mind can do it. Our mind can make the parts. It can make tools. It can, you know what I'm saying?
T-1000, man. That thing freaked me out. I remember I had nightmares about it.
Yeah, you could be the floor and everything. It's, oh my God, you're doing that.
Call John now. Like he has no emotions. That's what's scary, right?
Yeah, it says there's words. You ever hear those words in the background? You're walking down the street. Have you seen this boy? You run.
Yeah, I mean that's what's going on with the AI and tech world. Basically, we got these machines running our life that have no emotion. You know.
Yeah, and I know that you find out about black goo. You're like, oh no, I don't want to know.
And they make jokes. That Sophia robot, the girl one, it makes jokes, and you know they don't feel humor.
Yeah.
So why? Yeah. That's even creepier, right? It has no humor. It just makes jokes because it knows that if you laugh, you'll trust it more. You know?
That's right. If you smile, I sort of give it like faces and stuff like people. But then I wonder, are some of these coders messing with us? Because I remember when the AI Google AI first came out, people were asking it questions and asking it about God and stuff, and it was just like, you know what I mean? Saying it was basically talking like Satan, and I thought, and then messing with you.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, when we open the phone lines up tonight, if you want to call in, it's 1-800-588-0335. That's the call-in number as well. And you can join the chat room and talk to all the cool folks in there. If you go to fringe.fm, click on the Discord banner or go to the fringe.fm/chat room. Yeah, I see all kinds of new people come into the chat room, but they comment once or twice and then they're gone. So there's like, I think what it is, it gets clicky in there, doesn't it? Like people feel like
maybe
there's a click, you know, and you're not a part of it. You can't feel that way here. You just can't.
Yeah, I think I did wonder about that when I first came in, because you're like, well, I think it's that natural thing when you enter a new club or you go to a new school or a new job, you're like the outsider, aren't you? And you think, oh, maybe people won't like me and stuff, you know, and it can be a bit intimidating, can't it? But I think once you get in there, you know, I had the best example as well, because I came in with something that kind of, I thought it caused a kerfuffle, but I stood my ground, and it turns out it's just a misunderstanding. It was the most ironic one ever. So it was like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Move on.
So all you got to do is just talk. And if no one acknowledges you, just keep talking and they'll acknowledge you.
Yeah, you'll get noticed in that. Post a funny, you know, get my attention. But so I was talking to listeners coming in and fans and stuff. Can I give a shout out to Christine Drinkwater?
Christine,
thanks again.
Yeah,
thanks
for
so
sure.
much, man. I was kind of moved and I didn't know what to say at the time.
Well, she sent a whole package too. Like she sent some stuff and sent it to the mailing address, which we got to change that, by the way. I'm getting that rerouted to Arizona. And so, you know, she was kind of worried because she didn't hear anything back, you know, and she sent you some money and sent some other stuff. And yeah, it's really cool because to me, that was like the epitome of, you know, that was the trigger. Right? So we like to manifest stuff around here, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight with our guests coming up. And magic, specifically chaos magic. I want to discuss with him about ritual magic. This is deep, you guys. You know, everything that goes into manifestation, to what I believe, we all like to validate our points, but we have to, you know, learn a little bit more here. And I believe that magic is essentially just bringing the two forces of the universe. You know, you can call them whatever, male, female, alpha, omega, you know, the two pillars, whatever. You bring them together, you manifest it. There's a process to it, right? And you let it go. But why do we do rituals? What is this thing about ritual? We need to talk about that. Like, what is the power of it? Because if you were sitting in the stands watching someone do a magic ritual, it would look kind of ridiculous, wouldn't it? If you think about it. Yeah. If you don't believe me, go on YouTube and watch some people that do magic rituals. You start feeling a little weird, you know, like awkward. unless at least I do. But
well, I wonder if I've wondered about that, and I've wondered about that in relation to the British colonialism in China, and they used to say, oh, the kung fu suits are pajamas and they're just dancing, but they're doing these movements, aren't they? They're doing these ritualistic salutations to get the muscle memory kicked in, because they've already programmed the body. And I wonder if is that what rituals for in terms of religion or in terms of magic or in terms of whatever you're using it for, is ritual to like program the muscle memory of your brain, you know, to get into the routine. So it's like,
yeah.
I don't know.
So the way I understand it, and, you know, because I kind of followed the regular Golden Dawn system of stuff, is you're pretty much retraining your mind, body, and your subconscious and your focus and energy. It's like you're giving yourself the tools based on all these symbols and these symbols like the pentagram, the hexagram, all of these things. They have massive, massive magical egregoric archetypal power to them that are connected to things that mean certain things, right? So it's pretty cool to study. And you guys know how I feel about Crowley, right? But he did kind of write a good book about the drama of ritual, and we're going to get into that discussion too. So if you ever go to a play, if you ever been to a play, at first, you ever notice like when you watch a play, and you're not somebody that goes to the theater frequently, but you know, it kind of feels awkward at first because it's not like you're watching a movie, but then you kind of give in to the story, you know?
Yeah.
There's something going on there.
This actually that's a great example for, because in Britain we have pantomimes, a thing called panto. It's like a tradition, and it is like that. But they kind of even highlight that bit in a way. They kind of make it awkward and silly, and try and get a crowd involved. So then it pulls you in to this new way of just having fun and interacting and stuff. And it's like, he's behind you. You have to shout that, you know.
Yeah. So this guy, he wrote this book, Hands-on Chaos Magic, Reality Manipulation through and I don't even know how to say this, the Ovakai current. And he also published Magic on the Edge, the anthology. And this is cool, right? Because to me, there's two versions of this. You know, you do kind of magic to come in contact with your higher self, develop your astral energies and your subtle bodies. And then there's other forms of magic where you just want to manifest things to have a better life. And there's some ethical questions there too. You know, a lot of people have ethical, moral questions about that stuff. But personally, I don't know what you think, but if you can pull a trigger inside of you to manifest something, I don't think, especially if it makes you happy, and I would say, as long as you're not interfering with someone else's will, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah,
at all.
I would even say maybe it's an obligation, because if you don't get these things for no reason, do you? You know.
Yeah, we got a lot of crazy programs here, don't we?
Yeah,
it's too good to be true. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. I mean, that's like the worst one. And then we also have, you got to work hard to be successful. Well, no, you don't. There are people proving that. And I mean, if you go to, my son showed me this too on TikTok, right? He said, look, there's people on TikTok making millions of dollars, and they'll do like a dance move or a hand gesture, and that's it. And they start a trend, you know.
Look at the kid on YouTube, man. How lucky is he? Seen that kid who reviews toys on YouTube, like a Eastern kid.
It's like an open box channel or something.
Something like that. Yeah, and basically this kid, man, he gets millions of viewers. They must be making tons of money. And his mom and dad just buy him the latest cool toys, and he just opens them up, and you get a kid's reaction. And then he'll put it together, and his dad will help him and stuff. And he just goes driving around in his little electric car, and he's just got all the best toys ever.
Right.
Millions of kids are watching it, like, oh my God, you know. And it's like, wow, man.
So
he's still doing well.
The thing that we need to check out is like, what is the difference between those people and their mindset and ours? And I think magic kind of helps with that. You know, the older generations, we have a lot of negative programming. I got to tell you, beliefs that they're not very, I'm having a hard time talking today. I can tell you all that too, but they don't have they're not useful to me.
Yeah. Like if it's not educational, or if it's not progressing you, like it's spiritually evolving, you know, I don't know. It's like it's not.
Well, you know, you got to work hard for your money. It's too good to be true. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Like, where does that come from? Like, you're supposed to feel guilty about looking at cake and eating it. I mean, really, I don't know. There are things like that don't feel good if, you know, in certain scenarios. But there's a lot of people that have their cake and eat it too. You know?
Yeah, that's true. I think honestly, this is my opinion, right? But I think a lot of that mindset is getting programmed from religions to just so they can control people a bit easier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That mindset of like that. I've never been able to go with that thing, oh, we're all born sinners. And I talk to hardcore Christians and Catholics about it, and they'll be like, oh no, you're born into sin. Obviously a baby is innocent, you're right, but then you're born into sin. I'm like, well, it all seems a bit like a setup, because if, you know what I mean, if we've been made by God and then made wrong and then we're sinners, and it all seems a bit like, I think they twisted things up a little bit in terms of getting balance and stuff. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's historically, that's kind of what, you know, it's what it said. We want something that's going to make people obedient and unified. And I think there's same with marriage.
Here's my theory. We all came to here like babies, and then we all grew up and we just started agreeing on stuff, and we all think we know everything. And really, we don't know crap, right? So like the magicians, the people that are studying magic and practicing it are starting to realize that, hey, maybe we've been kind of dumb this whole time, maybe kind of like, because I'm like, you know, I was telling you yesterday about being out here in Arizona. If you think about where you are in your life, you can track it back and see how you manifested it. You can. All you got to do is trace it back. You manifested pretty much just about everything in your life. Yeah. We don't think that, though. It's the Truman Show.
That's one of them hard lessons, is because I've told some people some stuff like, oh, I've had these experiences in life, this, that, and other. And then they get the feedback that, oh, that's really harsh and that's not supposed to happen, and this, that, and other. But also at the same time, by the same token, I've invited loads of this stuff in by not setting boundaries. Do you know what I mean? By not setting my value high. And so then people could come along and manipulate you whenever you want, if you allow it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I used to allow people I used to be open to that all the time, but most people didn't do it. Do you know what I'm saying? When they cut off. So
magic,
it's like you
though,
do,
right?
Yeah.
You just
There's so many things.
You think magic is boundaries? Like that's what the circle is, right? Yeah. The magic circle.
Yeah.
So, it's a boundary that kind of, to me, it's like a boundary that encapsulates everything. You know, it's kind of like this place that you go to where you realize that you're God in the flesh, but you don't want to stay there because you get like megalomania, you know?
Yeah, I used to be afraid of that. Yeah.
When you go to that place, that's when you connect with the force, the creative force, and you go there. And you know, a lot of Christians and stuff, they have a hard time hearing that because they believe God is separate and they're sinners and they're lower than everything, you know. And it's and I don't care what you believe, it doesn't matter to me. I respect it. I just want to find out the truth. That's what matters to me. That's it. And I think that you should balance that, I think. Because if you just walk around like you're just God all the time, you go jump off a bridge and say, I'm God, I can fly, see what happens, you know?
Exactly. And I think there's some trust you've got to have in yourself, like say, because we're kind of, I don't say put down or made to feel guilty or whatever so much, because it just makes us more easy to control, right? Then you have to have a bit of faith in yourself to say, well, no, I can step into that God power and I won't abuse it, and I can be in it and bask in it for a moment and then come out and use it as an inspiration. I think we've got to be able to trust ourselves as well, that we won't abuse the power if we take it, you know, because there is a responsibility there, you know.
Like chaos magic is, to me, is something it's interesting. You know, I've practiced it a little bit with sigils and stuff, but it's something entirely different, right? Because you see people like Grant Morrison creating comic books like The Invisibles, and pretty much manifest in his life from what he has written in these comic books. They're using not just archetypes from the past, but even comic book characters. We're talking about some magicians that invoke like Batman and Superman. And, you know, there's this practice in magic called what is it called? The assumption of God forms, where you assume a character. And basically it's just like imagination. And don't take this wrong. I don't want people looking at imagination like it's just your imagination. No. That's your real power, actually. And they assume the God form of whoever. And they, the Golden Dawn system did it with whatever God, Egyptians, Greek. And then the Chaos Magicians kind of said, well, I could do Batman, Superman,
Mm-hmm.
and things, they learn these techniques and things in their life would happen as if they were that character, or they could tap into that energy. It's really insane. It's kind of cool, though.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think someone just noticed in the chat, somebody wrote Guyver. I didn't see what it was related to, but yeah, because that's all I see. I think you're trying to, this stuff helps you boost yourself to some next level thing, to tap more of yourself,
Yeah. If you guys, for sure, I believe that too. If you guys, the people, I know a lot of people just got shirts and stuff. Send a picture like Ali V did. Send a picture with you wearing your Voidwalker gear so we can get you on the website. I like to keep things fresh. We got to renew some of these. We got to get that speak pipe thing going again and get some of these Voidwalkers going. But yeah, I want to see the pictures of it. I hate, knowing that all you guys got gear and I can't see you in it. Don't worry, just send the pic. Night Stalker, he's not ashamed. He sends like pics of himself meditating in the hoodie and stuff. It's pretty cool. Are you there, brother? Did something happen?
Yeah. So I just lost my page. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I don't want anyone in rucksacks, man. I keep constant now. I've got this hold all bag.
Rucksack?
In my back, cycling. I need one of your knapsacks, your backpacks, bro. I need one, man. I gotta get one. So.
Well, we might do something for like a competition. I know that we're gonna do a fun for Rohan. We just have to get the page and the link to get him over here. And people in the chat are asking when we're going to start the Voidwalker or the Fringe FM rave party. That's got to happen right out here in the desert.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Listen, I got to tell you something real quick before we go into break. I don't know if any of you guys have been to Arizona or the Sedona area, but the sky, it gets to a place where it's like deep purple. It's beautiful here, but it's very free feeling. You can camp out anywhere here in the desert, anywhere. For 2 weeks. As long as you don't stay there longer than 2 weeks, you can pitch a tent anywhere you want. Isn't that insane?
Move the tent to like 50 feet away.
I don't really know about that. I just know you can't stay in the same spot for 2 weeks.
I know what you're saying.
And
that sounds free though.
It is free. And it's like living in a Mad Max film too, because out here you can drive four-wheelers and dune buggies up and down the road. It's legal.
Yeah.
You can conceal a weapon. You can put a loaded weapon in your car or in your, in your clothes or whatever. They don't care. It's like the Wild West out here. It's Mad Max for sure.
I think I can push it to a Gatling gun on my gunmetal dune buggy. I mean, just for the look, I won't load it.
You actually could do that out here, I think. Like have a dune buggy with a gun hoisted on the top of it and just drive down the road. I'm not playing. I mean, what's more free than
rabbits,
that?
Boys.
It's like being inside of Borderlands video game out here mixed with Grand Theft Auto,
That's what it looks like. Borderlands landscape. That's what it looks like exactly on the pictures.
We got scorpions and red fire ants, rattlesnakes, and jackrabbits. I've never seen a jackrabbit before till now.
Oh, have you ever caught a rabbit? Be careful about your answer.
I don't know what that means in England, but
no, well, it's the Elvis song, isn't it? If you ever caught a rabbit, then you're no friend of mine.
Yeah. Jackrabbits got really tall ears too. They're funny looking, So
yeah. Oh man, that's
anyways, cool. I know we're just rambling. We're gonna get into this discussion with our guest coming up. You guys, Andrea Vitimus is here with us, and Rohan, keep doing what you're doing, brother. You're killing it.
Cheers, man. Oh, appreciate that, man. I love this.
We're gonna get you out here for sure. We got to.
Yeah, man.
We'll be right back. We're gonna talk about chaos magic. Stay with us. Chat. When we open the phone lines up, remember that calling number is 1-800-588-0335. And Andrieh Vitimus is here with us, and he's the author of the modern magical classic, Hands-on Chaos Magic, Reality Manipulation Through the Ovikai Current. Also published in Magic on the Edge Anthology, the Manifesting Prosperity Anthology, the Pop Culture Anthology, and the Best of Canton Magazine Anthology. Now, he holds the highest initiatory rank in Haitian Voodoo, and that of, looks like I'm probably going to say this wrong, Hogan Asagui, and is a Asui, and I'm going to say all this stuff wrong, Karuna Reiki master and NLP practitioner and a licensed hypnotherapist. And currently he is a faculty at Peter Carroll's, or currently is in the faculty at Peter Carroll's Arcanorium College. And he is the host of the international successful radio show Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole, and which is DTRH.com, and has taught at conventions across the Midwest, including Starwood, Sirius Rising, Babylon Rising, Convocation, the Real Witches Ball, and various pagan prides and more. Man, I'm sorry I butchered all that. I said all those words, but thanks for coming on, brother.
No worries. I'm probably going to just, change my whole bio to say I just do stuff. Just do that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, no, it's, like some of these words I'm not familiar with. What is the, did I say that right? The Ovakai current?
Yeah.
Oh, I said it right. Cool.
So, and it's kind of interesting because you read off this list. And actually, when I give my bio now, like, it is far less because I've been taking on the minimalist role. But I've done all this stuff. And, it goes right into the topic today of, chaos magic and kind of astral travel and all the things that we're probably going to talk about. And why would I go through all these things and go get these things? It's not for the titles.
Sure.
At all.
Yeah, but it's cool to know that you went on that journey, because I just started getting into NLP too. And when I talk to people about NLP, everybody has a really, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have a negative connotations about it for some reason. They feel like that it's evil or something. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, so NLP is just cognitive science. And if you're going to say NLP is evil, you got to basically say all the applied cognitive science is evil. I'd accept that if people would go to that whole route. So the reason they're like NLP is evil is because people would like to believe that we have complete free will, that we can't be influenced, that subtle language patterns can't change our behavior. But the truth is that psychology for many years has been, in applied fashions in the media, spent billions and billions of dollars to influence your choices. All this stuff really works, and it just learning NLP is, in a practical way, it lets you actually start learning tools of hypnosis, how the brain actually works, and it does it just with a simplified tool set than getting a whole cognitive science degree, which, mind you, that I actually did. Got a cognitive science degree. So I know it's mainly just cognitive science and some hypnosis techniques, kind of putting the best toolkit together. And it generally works great for sales, and it can work great for self-transformation. It's the sales part that makes people believe it's evil. Because basically sales are evil. But one of the axioms in NLP, which many people won't easily want to accept, is that all communication is persuasion. And they want to believe that's not true. But when you actually think about when we communicate, you're persuading people to even keep listening. You're interacting with someone and connecting. And NLP takes the kind of tools that work best to connect with other people and shortcuts it. Makes the best practice.
Yeah. Do you think do you combine this stuff? Like, I know you discuss magic ritual a lot. And when we do magic ritual, that, you have to say certain formulas or names or whatever. But to me, I've started learning, well, I wonder if I change the magic ritual, instead of doing the formulas, maybe use a little NLP in the ritual too, would probably enhance it a bit, wouldn't you think?
I think absolutely. And I think when you read Hands-On Chaos Magic, that's the exact perspective that I'm pulling in. The formulas, generally speaking, isn't the magic. That's not what produces the magic. Someone can just, I know there's many people will just sell books with formulas, and they're good. They really are. They're great correspondences. Some people just sell mantras or sigils that they made. But by themselves, that's not enough. You are the missing component. NLP is sort of like not the perfect toolkit for studying your own brain, but it gets you a good way into learning how your brain works so you can actually make this stuff work. And the thing is about magic is that, magic and occultism and kind of a lot of spirituality gets a lot of bad reps, but you can make miraculous things happen. They're just not the kind of miracles that you see in Hollywood.
Yeah, and it's hard to prove it. This is kind of why I went down this road, and I loved, practicing magic and talking to people about it, is because to me, everything always seems like, no matter how miraculous, it always comes in what seems to be a coincidental or natural form, right? And so this is kind of a question that I would like to ask you is, I've heard a lot of magicians say everything is possible with magic or inside the circle, and others say, well, lots of things are possible, but there are some things that are just impossible. I want your views on that.
I would tend to be towards the everything is possible, but there's some major caveats to that. So I am ultimately, although I consider myself a great magician, an okay writer. My book's really good because I have great editors. First and foremost, I'm a magician. And second, I'm a skeptic, which usually you don't hear that many combination too often. Yeah. In my career, I'm a data scientist, right? That's my day-to-day work. I do the occult stuff too, but I'm a data scientist. And basically, I work with numbers all the time, and real numbers, and I have a STEM degree in computer science as well. This is all hard, metric-based stuff we're looking at. And I take that philosophy too. So it's like, is anything possible? Yes. Is it worth doing? Maybe. See, most of the things that people want to see, the Hollywood things, require enormous amounts of effort. Do they make people's lives better? Not really. Probably not, actually. And what is the payoff for the amount of work it would actually take? So yes, if you're like an Indian guru and you're out in the rustic area, the village takes care of you, sure, you want to prove to the world that magic is real, that the spirituality is a real thing, that perhaps we don't quite understand everything we should understand about the world. And maybe there's some holes in the materialist philosophy. Holes that in some cases you could drive a truck through, that's okay. When you start doing this stuff, weird stuff happens. Is that the goal? For some people, they think that's the goal. But magic is hard. It's hard in the way that it grinds you because you have to keep analyzing yourself. You have to keep analyzing the results you're getting. You have to keep learning techniques. You have to keep refining. And it's a process. Like usually I find magicians are driven by, it's not practical magicians are also driven not by the spiritual escapisms you see so common, but by a question of why? Why did this even work? At all? Why, at all? What's the mechanism? Like, there's a game being played. We can all see it. We can all feel it. But we're like, what's the game? We're trying to figure out the game. Like, and that's almost, it sounds less spiritual than some other spiritual paths, but it's very spiritual. You're trying to figure out the game. This reality coincidences shouldn't really happen. But do I believe that almost anything is possible? Yeah. I used to do investigation with one of my friends, paranormal investigations. He would paranormal investigate the rituals I did. You could get pretty tangible paranormal results based on their criteria. Now, is that the same as, an entity stepping out of the shadows and backhanding you across the wall? No. Has that happened to me? Yes. Is it fun? No. So all the times that, all the things that people would think is, this would be really cool. It usually isn't when it happens. Like, having a physical encounter with an entity yeah, that's cool as a story, and when it actually happens, it's kind of like, what just happened here? So it's kind of like, do I think everything's possible? Yeah. Is everything worth doing? Maybe not. So it's a little bit different discussion on that.
Yeah, that's something that really gets me too, that I think about constantly. And I've had people tell me, like, why do you want to know why it happened or how it works? Shouldn't you be like happy that it works? No, I want to know. I want to see the construct. I want to know, like there's a movie called Dark Song where this guy's taking this woman through the Abramelin ritual out in a house. We all watched it on Netflix here in the chat room too, but they didn't. It's not the real symbols and the real things of Abramelin, but that's what he says in the movie. And she's like, "Are you doing this for power?" And he says, "No, I'm doing it for knowledge, to know. Like, I want to see the construct. I want to know why this works. It's not as much as seeing demons or angels or having, silver dust rain down on you. I want to know why it's happening,
I mean, the truth is that goes back to the first thing we're talking about. And I promise this all relates to chaos magic too. It's like, so where do you get these weird experiences? Well, getting to the point you can film weird experiences takes enormous amount of energy. And I've done that. I've worked through that. And the reason to do that is really not for you. It's to prove that this stuff exists to other people when you're trying to do that as a teacher. That said, if you're using NLP and self-hypnosis and meditation and all these other tools from like hands-on chaos magic, you're building your mind's imagination up to the point that your internal reality is stronger than the external reality, even for a little bit of time. And when that happens, weird stuff starts occurring.
Like what's probably the weirdest or one weird thing that happened to you that might be hard to believe?
Well, see, a lot of the times I've had issues with tornadoes that were witnessed by people, where I'd call a storm, there would be a tornado or a flood. Wow. Yeah, well, oops.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Oops. I've had spirits physically manifest, and I have pictures, some of which I can't actually share because the spirit asked me not to share them. So I said, okay, I won't share them. But some which I did share. I've had situations where we did group rituals and everyone could see that. I've had situations where, like I said, I got thrown against a wall in an exorcism of a place, which again, yeah, in retrospect, it makes for a cool story. I can guarantee you when it happened, it wasn't so cool to have my nose bloodied and me wiping the blood out of my eyes and there's nothing there.
Wow, that's intense. That's pretty scary. And I think most people, when I try to get people, what I want to do is try to get people to explore their consciousness in a practical way. I don't really care if it's magic or meditation or astral travel. I just think that we will get more answers that way. But what I do find is I want to be careful based on what you're saying. I've had people come on here and say, magic isn't dangerous. Others have said, like, it absolutely is. Dr. Stephen Skinner came on here and told me that about some really crazy stuff that was dangerous. But then again, I've had people say the same thing about astral travel. Just some really evil, scary stuff. But that's not been my experience. So I don't know.
Can this stuff happen? Yes. If I'm going in getting hired as an exorcist, I'm going in as a professional, right? So it's like you're hiring a surgeon or to go in and do surgery. So expect that to happen. That kind of stuff happens. That's a little different. That's not most people's experiences. So we're talking about what's the weirdest things that happen. That's the weirdest. That's not the usual thing. I mean, certainly once you get the tools down, you can see spirits. You can feel them. Now, is magic dangerous? Yes, absolutely, but not in the way people think.
Like it's not
the real
Final Destination dangerous, maybe.
No.
Okay.
I mean, but see, it's hard to talk about this stuff because it can be. Curses are real. You can make that stuff happen, but it's not as easy as people think, first of all. And second of all, that it's not as common as people think. So we're talking about what's most common. Well, most common for most magicians are you're trying to, get a job, get a new girlfriend or get a boyfriend, whichever you prefer, and you're trying to use spiritual forces and energies to actually, just better your life. Astral travel, I consider all these as tools in the toolbox that could be useful for that. Can bad things happen in these things? Yeah, but it's not the norm, especially not if you have the fundamentals down. When people usually get the most in trouble with magic is because of the escapism aspects. They don't have enough skepticism to not disbelieve what they're thinking, what they see or experience, but just analyze it. So they buy all in, and then weird stuff keeps happening as they keep buying in, and then it keeps kind of cycling in this way, especially negative things. So it keeps cycling, but even a rudimentary understanding of how spirits work from a more energy point of view is when you're thinking about it and obsessing over a negative experience, you're feeding it. And then basically what happens, it gets stronger and weirder. And that's how a lot of ghosts work and a lot of poltergeists after a while. Not all of them, but a good number, is they get fed after a couple occurrences. So they have so much like psychic energy that they can scare other people. And that's the same thing. That's what happens. You have one negative experience, and what people do is they just kind of stay there instead of like actually using techniques of like meditation and clearing yourself. All these basic tools, those are enhanced in chaos magic, that people want to skip because they want to rush into having real experiences. It's the real that's the problem. Calling it real is the problem, because it suggests that I want to push the boundaries, right, and have some kind of experience. Having an experience is cool, but it's not magical results. It's not real world changes. It's cool. It's a drug trip. It's a different type of drug trip.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily the goal, right? So if you have the kind of right foundations, you just go, okay, that happened. Let's think about that now. I mean, what happened in that experience was kind of scary, and I should process that. I should do art with that. I should think about that. I should come to terms with what happened and what I saw, not necessarily loop in fear. That's when people get in the most trouble. And ironically enough, with magic, when you actually talk about even stuff like demons and possessions and stuff like that, who are the people who are usually the people getting possessed are the most fundamental Christians, because it becomes a loop of fear.
Yeah, they
keep feeding it. Right, they keep feeding it. The whole people around them feed it, because they're basically like, oh yeah, this is so bad. You definitely have demon possession. You know what? The thing is, when we talk about magic, and when we get to chaos magic, talking about that in a second, it is even more that when all these people are the social people around you are reinforcing this, whatever magic it is, all of a sudden the coincidences get even more strange and weird, and odd things can happen. Like somebody does have a classical possession. Used in a positive way, possession rituals are a huge part of voodoo, and that's used to better people's lives. So all these, it gets back to understanding the mechanisms, and then what's the game being played,
Yeah. That's some of the big questions I have too. It's just, I feel like I'm always trying to find this formula sometimes. Not, I wouldn't say formula, but fundamentals. But when I started practicing like ritual magic, I realized why people are afraid of it, because it gets pretty, it can get intense. It kind of looks scary. It looks like if somebody didn't know what you were doing, if you were doing a ritual, and they just walked in, it would look like you were, automatically it's that satanic panic thing, right? Well, they're worshiping the devil or something. But really, it's weird, right?
I mean, fundamentally, I make a joke like people's idea of what magicians do versus what they do are so radically different. I mean, you know what people think magic is about is this. I mean, it is kind of like the Dark Song, right? I mean, weird stuff happens in that movie. And if you do the Abramelin ritual, you can get weird stuff to happen. Maybe not that weird, but it's this Hollywood notion of what's going on. But what the Hollywood notion is generally describing is an internal state. It's art trying to describe an internal experience in an external way. And the artists know that. The producers know that. But people watching, because they don't have a context, think this is the way it is. And I'm not going to say that weird stuff doesn't happen. We already talked about that. It does. And I personally love to do theatrical rituals. So while I might play loose and hard with the rules, theatrical rituals are fun. But I also know it's fun because I view it as an art form. That's a fundamentally different understanding. That's me engaging in the theater act of magic because I enjoy it, because I think it's fun, because it's cool when you watch that and you're like, yeah. But that's different than the interpretation I think people listening might have. They might think that's done and that's scary, but it's no different than a theatrical performance in that case. Now, yes, the goals are different with spiritual work, regardless of the paradigm, but the mechanisms are theater again. So again, we have theatrical costumes, we have all that, and it goes back to the Satanic Panic that never really ended, honestly. Even though people think it did, it never really did. And by the way, there was never really any convictions in the 80s, and the FBI said it was all lies. So keep that in mind. It was all faked. And this all comes down, I think it's less now, actually, especially in the younger generations. It's clear that they are more open to a lot of this stuff.
Well, I used to think this, and we got to take a break here. So, but I used to think when I first started doing this that it was kind of creepy until I started studying, the symbolism and all of these things. And I'm like, well, understand the double slit experiment as well. You start thinking, well, what if I'm just artistically speaking to the creator or collective consciousness or whatever controls that, because it understands ritual, it understands symbols, it understands things in its highest and most, I wouldn't say highest or simplest form, right? So my mind is always trying to find the reason why it works, right? And then there's that fundamental question, and I just want to get a quick answer from you before we go into our break here at the top of the hour. Is this stuff in the mind, is it simply changing your focus, therefore you think it manifests? Or is there something else truly magical or maybe scientific? We just don't understand the science of it yet. Is there something magical going on? Or is it just in the mind?
So, yes. And what I mean by that is it's probably both. And it has to be. And because we are not, once you get further along, I have reasonable evidence to say it's not just inside my head. But if I couldn't access it from my head, it wouldn't ever have happened. So and this is a dichotomy that is part of all Western philosophy. The mind-body separation, the mind-soul separation, or the body-soul separation. It's a fundamental part of Descartesian Western society. It is not a fundamental part of Eastern cultures, which have a different cultural view of how this could work and how the body, mind, and spirit could work together. It's not a fundamental part of shamanic cultures or indigenous cultures, that your mind and body and spirit aren't separated. Once you blur those lines, the question becomes a lot harder to answer. Is it inside your mind? It absolutely is. Are you getting external effects that other people can see? Yes, that's absolutely possible. Is it also happening in their minds? Yes. So when we start talking about this and we get down to talking about the game that we were talking about, the game might be a little bit more complicated than than the question can answer. We might have to talk about systems and different systems and where these results are, where these things are happening in which system and how they're happening in different systems simultaneously. Because the game might be a little bit more of a multiplayer, multi-level game at the same time.
Yeah.
And that can be very interesting. We still have to, there's a lot of aspects that we could talk about that. See, now personally, I know for a fact, you do this enough, you could get evidence.
Yeah, for sure.
Statistical evidence to show magic is real. Just coincidences. And you can get statistical evidence at the same rate that the social sciences do.
Well, let's talk about that. We'll talk about the evidence, magic, chaos magic, astral travel. We're here with Andrea Vitimus. More Lighting the Void coming up. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Lighting the Void. Our guest tonight, Andrea Vitimus, is here with us. We're discussing the occult, magic, and all of the above. Hypnosis, NLP, astral travel, all that stuff that some people are afraid of. However, I believe it is the key to unlocking the human potential. And that's what we are as void walkers anyways, right? Because I don't believe that we can answer the questions to today's society by getting on Facebook or arguing politics or being afraid of the corporations. I really believe that we can manifest what we want and that you can become a ghost. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, Andrea, but to me, like, if you can get in your astral body and become a ghost, like, why are you so worried about banks and corporations? You know? Why would you even worry about that? What do you think about that, brother?
Well, yeah. Why worry about that? Partially, I like the planet.
Yeah, right. Me too. I like life. I love it.
There's a lot of pretty things.
Yeah, you know, and you do hear people say this too in the New Age community a lot, specifically, I can't wait to leave the earth. I can't wait to get out of here and ascend. And to me, it's like, yeah, but what if the goal isn't, and I talked to a lot of people about this, but what if the goal is life and light? What if the universe is conspiring to create life, a conscious, living, individual experience, and that's what this whole game is? Then why would you want to escape it? What if the goal is heaven on earth, to create a utopia, to ascend here in physical form, so we can experience concepts and that real reality? Like, I think there's some kind of plan here going on. And I feel like the reason why a lot of people are into the occult, and you see all these tarot readers now and it's getting bigger, is because there's something inside of us saying, hey, you know, there's something else going on here. You know what I'm saying?
So I have a whole bunch of theories about that. But I don't know, we should talk about chaos magic too, and I'll weave in those theories too. So I think, you know, one of the supposedly dark paths is, you know, necromancy. People are scared of that too, talking to the dead. But you realize something when you really work with the dead is that they don't necessarily exist in time. And that's a problem. Time, you know, the physicality of our existence brings the consequence of time. And time is what allows us to actually order events in a way that makes a simple narrative story. Without time, we have a random collection of events that do not make sense. And that's how the dead often exist. That's how my experience, when I'm communicating with them, they're bridging off of the fact that I live in time to re-understand the world. Which tells you, my experience tells me a lot about what it means to be without a body and without time. All events probably, I'm not dead, so I can't say for sure. I don't know for sure. But it seems like all events happen at one time. And you can't make narrative sense out of it. So what we get as having a body, what we get is time. And time and struggle and constraint allows us to develop meaning, which we otherwise couldn't have. It would basically be all events happen at once. And this is actually how the Kabbalah describes not God in the Christian sense, because the Kabbalistic God is more like a force. And that is exactly how they sort of describe the living one with God. All events happen at once. Even events that don't exist are happening all at once. And that doesn't derive meaning. Like, the gift of being here and being here now is that we actually have the ability to exist in time, which pushes a linear narrative that we can actually live in a story. A story we can understand and derive meaning and make progress, which otherwise, without the body that gives us a bridge into time, I'm not so sure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought too, because reading Robert Monroe's books, it seemed like that was the thing too. When you astral traveled, he started going into these other places, and two things started happening. Two big things, that time kind of got jumbled up, and also people's beliefs that were getting trapped or, I guess stuck between wherever they were supposed to go when they passed away. Whatever their beliefs was and or energies or addictions were, that's what happened to him in the astral realm. I mean, there were even people that approached him that thought that, he was the devil there to take him to hell. Like, it's your belief is insanely powerful over what happens to your reality and even after death, it seems.
And that's a beautiful segue, because this is the fundamental idea of chaos magic. Is that almost that core idea? Do the ritual formulas matter? Not really. Does the talismans matter? Yeah, maybe a little. But you know what matters a lot more? Is your belief in them. That creates the reality around you. And your ability to utilize your belief as a tool. And utilize the systems as a tool. The actual religious systems as tools to channel belief into changing different aspects of reality. Which there's a long precedent for this in science. This is what quantum physics is basically doing. This is what art is doing with postmodern literature and art, where the observer's transforming things. These are all, or punk rock, back in the day. These are all aspects that are saying, well, maybe the observer creates the very thing that they're observing. Maybe our belief in the tools either creates our connection to it or the effectiveness of the tool. And I've actually found that to be largely true. You can spend, not true in a capital T sense, but, small t, it seems to work that way. You can spend hundreds of hours working on a talisman. Will it work? Yeah. But you've spent hundreds of hours working on a talisman. Your mind has no choice at that point except to accept that this is probably real, because otherwise, why would you have spent hundreds of hours on a talisman? The process itself convinces you. In other cases, you can get to a point where, is this real with a little mini ritual? Sure. Once you can get to the point that your internal state and your belief and your emotions are supporting, and you're paying attention to that reality in a much greater fashion than the external reality, that's when the weird stuff can happen. That's when you can get results. And different systems will use different phrasings, like, gnosis or getting into trance if you're hypnosis, or any combination thereof. But this is really what you're trying to do, is you're trying to make the internal world for just a moment be more real than the external moment. And when that happens, the external world, more often than not, breaks. It changes. I shouldn't minimize that, because to do what I'm saying takes years of practice. It really does. But once you can do it, more often than not, the external world will shift in relation to that moment, where the internal world is more real than the external world.
Yeah, and I think that you're spot on with that. You know how you can prove that, I think, especially with like divination, things like tarot, other things that you can do instantly, right? So you may have your mind and emotions and everything set on one thing, right? And if you flip some tarot cards, it will tell you either, your fear-based energy about that thing, or your love-based energy about it, or whatever. The second you change your story, or you focus on something else, or even focus on it, or come to believe something different, you can do a whole other spread, and it's different, right? And I've been kind of like experiment with this. So I've been watching these tarot readers on YouTube, and they'll tell you that here's the story, this is the story, this is the reality, right? And it's like a whole narrative they're telling you, and the next day it's something completely different, and you can see we're changing this as we go. Right. And this gets to the observer effect directly, right? So some people would say, oh yeah, that's proof that this is all garbage. But the mere fact that you got a reading, and I do tarot readings for clients, but I tend to do them a little differently than most people, because that in itself, just seeing what's going on, is not very helpful. What I would rather do is combine that with a plan to actually make the changes that you need to make, so you get a better life. That's the goal. So you're happier. So you can derive more meaning from life. Yeah. But the fact is when you do a tarot reading, the mere fact that you witness the tarot meeting changes the outcomes, because it either solidifies some things, or you avoid some things that you were doing, because you're like, oh, that's going to be really bad if I do that. And nothing more has to happen, right? You've fundamentally changed the probabilities across all things, because you've observed something where you either committed to it because you're like, this isn't true, I'm going to keep doing it, but you still changed how you're acting in relation to that. So when we talk about the earlier question of like, well, is it real magic or not? Well, people listening will say, well, see, that's just a placebo, right? But it fundamentally... Yeah, but they don't know what the placebo is either. That, to me, it's incredibly powerful. I see what you're saying.
Exactly. They don't know which way is the placebo, and you're exactly right. And in this case, we still change stuff. So when you see that on YouTube, when people are doing that, what happens when something happens to you? When you get information, your mind has to process it. Your story is changing. Now, granted, the way that we usually live is to have a consistent story. And that makes it really difficult to make magical changes. So in some cases, the subconscious mind is actually working against magic. And the people who know us also don't like when things change. So that works against magic.
Oh man, that is such a big point, right? Like that was all I talked about before I moved to Arizona, is this force of, there's always like these two forces, an energy that doesn't want things to change and an energy that does. And until the change happens, there's some it can get manic, it can get toxic, it can get, it's almost like life needs someone to make a decision all the time, every second. You can't stay in that place where a decision doesn't get made, because it causes stagnancy and toxicity in some ways.
In a way, not making a decision is making a decision. It's just information. So if you're not making a decision, not doing anything, you're making a decision. There's going to be certain outcomes from that. Now, the thing is about this is, when we talk about this, it just sounds like, oh, we're just talking about psychology. But really, in some cases, the whole point, the real purpose of the shocking ritual magic and all these different tools and techniques is because we need a reason to be able to change our story. Otherwise, our subconscious mind has difficulty doing that. And once that internal story changes and allows for the weird oddities to occur in the universe, it tends to happen around you. So it's like this narrative that we have about what is real and isn't real is even something down to the level that once that changes, you could live in a much more wondrous world of angels and the dead and demons all coming and living in basically what looks like a fictional world, although it's still not quite like a fictional world.
Yeah.
But all that's coming from because you've done all this stuff to your psyche, to your subconscious mind, that it's expanded to accept that. The weird thing about what we're saying is that you can get to the point where you've accepted that to such a degree that other people also just see that. They might not have accepted any of that, and it's really shocking to them.
Yeah,
that's part of the game. That's the oddity of the game. It's like, you know, weird stuff's happening to you. If it was all just in your head, that should never happen. That shouldn't be possible, that you do a summoning and you get it on film based on the fact of how much conviction you have, and you can get it on film.
So this comes to another question too, and I want to get into the chaos magic. The one thing I love about chaos magicians, especially like you, is you remind me of, how do I explain this? I truly love the fact that people do these things and do it based in some type of scientific method. I don't even know if I want to call it a scientific method, but they're reevaluating, trying to find the fundamental truths or parallels. It's just like when you study a martial art, you learn all the moves and stuff, but once you get to a certain place, then you start learning the fundamentals of why all these moves work, and it enhances you, you know? So I think that's what we're looking for, is the fundamentals of why this stuff works, because if we learn the fundamentals, then we can make it our own thing. We don't have to follow a formula. And I think that's kind of what chaos magic shows us. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think that's ultimately the goal. What is the mechanisms? Or if you treat it like, if you look at any one religion, and first of all, when we talk about religions without politics, we're already in trouble. When we talk about a system of magic that is presented from a book or something, like, there's political implications. Now, I know that's not popular to say, but people have a political point of view that they're presenting. So when you talk about like straight Western ceremonial magic, which is based off of Kabbalistic or Jewish magic, there's a political mindset and culture that goes into it. Mm-hmm. Now, chaos magic starts to ask questions like, well, what if we start divorcing some of these tools from the cultural baggage? And what do we get? Do they still work when we apply them in different ways? Is the mechanism still same? Now, believe it or not, you can look at Hinduism and use voodoo possession techniques, and they work. The rituals work. But that's outside the culture. You know, that's outside of some of the strains of Hinduism's culture. So, but yet the mechanisms still work. Whereas you can apply meditative Buddhist techniques to even working with the Loa, and they work. So you're trying to get to the tools how the tools work outside of the actual baggage of cultures, which has political implications. And to do that, you have to know enough about the cultures to know what is culture, what is mechanism. So it's not like I'm just saying, just go in and not study the things. You actually have to study the other cultures, which is why I have so many different titles and stuff like that, because basically that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to go study the different cultures so I can see, well, what is the real mechanism that actually works? What is the mechanisms that this culture brings to the table that maybe another culture hasn't.
Well, don't you like the Kabbalah has, different versions of it, right? They have the literal Kabbalah, the practical Kabbalah, all of these different things. But to me, I look at the Kabbalah as a Western mechanism of conscious exploration, because you can put several different God systems in there, Greek, whatever. And it all seems, Egyptian, Christian, it all seems to work out in this tree. And I think someone figured that out a long time ago. But then you get into like sacred geometry and oh my God, like you really start seeing there is a construct here. There is, at least for me, I'm curious what your thoughts is, but there is a construct here. There is something that has a formula or natural law to this. It just is a deep subject, though. I mean, we can go down that rabbit hole forever, too.
See, in a way, can we ever know whether that's a formula or the formula is effective at building enough belief that you can connect and manipulate the levers of the actual universe, of reality, and change it, both the levers inside and external? It's kind of like one of the NLP phrases that gets thrown around all the time is the map is not the territory.
Right.
Ultimately, can we know what the territory is? Probably not. But can we say whether the sacred geometry and maps of the Kabbalah work for many people to pull the levers? Yeah, it certainly does.
Yeah.
And things change.
Yeah, it does, right? And I feel like, okay, that tells me that is there a creator? So based on that, can we say, is there a creator? Or is there a God, so to speak? And I don't know why we call it God, because in magic, here's another thing too. When you work with spirits and stuff, and you invoke a God or evoke a God or take on a God form, there are times when you feel like you become that thing, that energy. And there's other times when you like, I need a favor and we're going to do this or that. And here you go. But what I get from my audience is don't do that. Not my whole audience, but let's just say the fearful. Don't do that because you could hurt yourself, or don't do that because that's not the ultimate God. It's a smaller God and you're having to submit to it. It's like the fear level, it gets taken over.
So we should talk about that a little, because I think God is a word. It's a very loaded word. Very. And it goes back to political. We were raised in a Western culture that is fundamentally Christian. It really is. This is North America. If you go back and read Thomas Aquinas or other Renaissance philosophers, God is very close to the one divided by zero, incomprehensible to the human mind. Mm-hmm. In fact, if you're a Catholic, you believe that's why God had saints and angels, because we can't really deal with God. We're too limited. So we have to deal with intermediaries. Now, granted, Protestants don't actually believe that. But the fundamentals of Christianity, too, go back to Judaism. And in Judaism, God is not so personable. It's a force. So what is God? In Taoism, there's the yin and yang. That's the raw thing. In chaos magic, or even in Greek mythos, it's chaos, the raw primordial soup that everything spawns from. In Buddhism, it's the void. In Hinduism, you might say there is a God, but it's more like light. These constructs of a unknowable God is not helpful for practical magic.
Right.
It's completely, so you can meditate on that your whole life, and that's a worthwhile task, but it won't let you get the mechanisms to change stuff. And the mere fact that these other intermediaries exist, either because we've created them culturally or they exist on their own, means they're kind of wanting to be called. Now, I get it. People are scared of that because that's against what we were taught for most of us. I think I could speak for myself. I was raised as a Catholic altar boy, and all of a sudden, now I'm summoning whatever entities, chaos magic, right?
Listen, I hate to stop you there, Andrea, but we have to take our last break here, man. We're on the clock, and this is deep stuff. We need more time here on this. You guys got to go check out his website, AndriehVitimus.com. Also, his podcast. We'll be right back. Stay with us. We'll open up the phone lines too. 1-800-588-0335. More Light of the Void coming up. All right, we're down at the bottom of the top of the second hour here, and we're here with Andrieh Vitimus. If you want to call in and ask our guest a question, it's 1-800-588-0335. We're talking about chaos magic and the occult, just how this stuff works. And this is the deepest of the deep. I love going into these deep discussions because to me, it releases the fear, right? And I'm big on that. I talk a lot about love and fear, Andrieh, because I see the rawest motivations of what we do, and I like to get down to why we do things, like to the very bottom of things. I guess I overanalyze stuff. Do you think people that overanalyze stuff are drawn to the occult? Because I think they do. I think they are.
So I think it depends, right? Like, yeah, ceremonial magic. There's a lot of people who like math a lot, and kind of analysis and the correspondences. But people who do conjure work, or taught from family traditions or stuff like that. Because trust me, although it's not talked about, there's a lot more people whose families kind of do this kind of thing, and grandma would teach you how to do a couple things than people think. Most people who are only a couple generations here, they have stories from their grandfather or grandmother, usually grandmother, about, hey, this is how this works. Do this little thing. Or in my family, it was, you have to have the priest come in and physically bless all the windows. And they know what they're talking about there, because they're basically trying to protect your space from evil influences. Even though they're using a priest, the way it's done is more like a magical operation. And so you'll hear that, or like in my family, like you have to bring lilies to the dead to honor them, because that's what you did in Ukraine, and that's what they want, because it uplifts them. There's all kinds of things like this that it's more common than people think. I think the real fear people have is that maybe we're right.
Yeah.
What does it mean if we're right? It means that you have to take responsibility. You have to actually know that, wherever you're at, the promise and horror of that is that you can change. And you can change your situation. That's horrible and awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
Now, that doesn't mean it's going to change easily.
Yeah, and it also puts people into this position where, like, well, why don't you change your situation? Because you can do it. It's like, well, yeah, but they don't understand that it's not that easy just to, and most of those people are hypocritical. Anyways, but you have to learn how to tap into it.
Exactly. And there's a lot of people that you'll hear this kind of, well, just change your situation. You brought that on yourself, or other things. It's a lot of toxic positivity, actually. Real change is very much aligned with a hero's journey. You're not just going to be able to change whole parts of your personality. You have to earn it. And like, when we say earn it, yeah, you might be earning it through the study of ritual magic or various astral work. You're transforming parts of yourself and you're earning it. And it goes back to that story aspect. A story can change overnight. But to change the embedded story of your being overnight means things are going to break. And we don't like that. So usually the bigger the change and the faster the change you want to make in reality, the greater the potential things will break, either in you, around you. Either any kind of magic you do can have ripple effects across all aspects of your life, because they have to change. It has to change because the story is changing, and some things no longer fit the story.
Yeah.
And if you go to external, go ahead.
Well, I think that your soul is invested in at least for me, in a certain story, right? And then when it wants to change, it kind of lets you know. Like, I'm always trying to be guided by this inner voice. And I'm not talking about the thoughts that go through my head. I'm just talking about this intuitive thing, because I know Israel Gardy talked about that. Essentially, becoming the magician is understanding how to listen to your intuition, how to understand what it is. And this whole idea of the holy guardian angel, which is the higher version of you, right? But if you get into that journey, you definitely are, at least for me, I get put in these places where I have to change and flux all the time. Who I am, what I believe, the stories, everything. And it's not, people think, oh, that's amazing. Well, it's not easy. It's hard. And it's incredibly lonely sometimes, you know?
And we leave the word higher outside of the picture. Maybe not here, right? Most traditions have an idea of some sort, that even Christian mystic traditions, that God is within, or chaos is within, or the Tao is within, or the void is within. Essentially, a way to think of it is there's a spark within. We can go to Gurdjieff, which has a really interesting take on this. And Gurdjieff basically takes the take that you have a spark of a soul. You have to earn the rest. That's really an interesting idea. It goes right to the intuition idea. You have to build the rest. Actually, you have to earn it. Right? So what does that mean? Well, it could, in my experience, it usually means being less encumbered by the restrictions of your conditions. So most people, we're limited by our history. We're limited by our family's history. We're limited by the conditioning we get every day from the media, from the newspaper. We're even limited by the language that we are speaking right now in English. One of the big facets of magic for me is to become less limited, to gain freedom, and understanding of all those different components and how they affect me, and to get not outside of it, because I don't necessarily think I want to elevate myself past being here because of the meaning thing, but actually be able to process it in any way I want, to understand the threads, to not be constrained by my previous traumas, not be constrained by my upbringing, not be constrained by what Joe, the plumber, did to me last week. Yeah. To be able to control my reactions, and to not only control my reactions, but to control the aspects not of internal and external reality, to make life an art form. Now, necessarily, it's not always going to be pretty either. The artistic process isn't. But I get really good results. And I mean, oftentimes, I get the results, and I have to think, well, that didn't quite, I got exactly what I asked for, but that didn't quite work out. And you just keep going, refining and kind of understanding, hey, it's a process. It's artistic process. The whole life is the artistic process of the story that we're creating. And that's scary, right? Because when you think about it this way, it's like, one way to even think about this, what if God is watching television right now, but millions and millions of television, and we're the show for him? I
actually think that's closer to reality than anything else,
I mean, that's almost directly, it's not exactly a quote out of the Vedics from Hinduism, but it's pretty close, that all life is a drama. And partially there's an external God, right? But really the God within is who we're putting the show on for. Like, it's not just the God without. It's both. We're putting a massive drama on all the time. Now, when you start phrasing reality in this way, it becomes like, well, yeah, maybe I should work on improving certain aspects of this. Also, no story and no writer, when we phrase all of it this way, is going to allow you to make a sudden change. Either way, you have to earn every single thing. You can't, that's where the toxic positivity comes in. Like, well, why did you bring that into your life? I hear that kind of stuff in the New Age community a lot, but it's like, the truth is that nobody knows what other people's situation is or what they're bringing to the table, right? They may have had massive problems. And the fact that they even going and using these tools of spirituality to get to work on a daily basis, that's amazing. Like, I mean, my dad was a drunk.
Yeah, right.
He beat me up.
I got
What
you.
is the natural, right? Where should I be? Probably a drunk in the gutter, right? That's where I should have ended up. But I didn't. I've got multiple master's degrees. And I attribute a lot of this to the fact that I got into this stuff and can reject my past and get freedom from all of that. I am greater than the sum of my history. And the greater I can become outside of the sum of my history, I believe the more freedom you get.
That's right, man. I'm totally with you on that. Yes.
Yeah. Right. I mean, this is the goal, right? This is where it's miraculous and scary. That isn't trivial. You don't just overcome the fact this bad stuff happened overnight, right? You have to work at it. And you have to get lucky with therapy. And this is where magic comes in. This is where the occult comes in. Things just sort of get lucky when you're doing this stuff. You still have to go apply for jobs if you're doing job spells. You still have to go out of your house if you're looking for a partner.
Right.
It's not like it just stops and you can just be like, yeah, I'm going to win the lotto, and you don't buy a ticket even. That's
exactly.
not going to happen.
Yeah, we've been saying that a lot too. Actually, people think it's like Harry Potter type stuff, but to me, it's more like a interchange of co-creation and energy. You do a ritual or whatever, basically you're saying to that force, this is what I want to happen. And that force is going to work with you. And then you're like having an energetic agreement. As long as you do your part, you're right. Like lucky, crazy, cool things happen,
Right. The thing is that part of this is because, this is my current working model. I changed my model. I'm not necessarily stuck in one model like a chaos magician should be, right? Like it can change. That's the whole point. But really, one of the things is that partially our subconscious mind will reject any changes that it doesn't see that we're carrying out in actual behavior. So essentially, if you think about a bell, a lot of times when we're calling a spirit, or we're asking for or trying to get a result, we are ringing a bell. And that bell unpredictably changes our social network, our energy system, our whole body, our mind. The louder the bell rings, the more the changes are. When you actually go out and don't do the things you need to do in line with that bell ringing, it acts as a counter agent to the bell.
Wow,
essentially,
that's a really good analogy.
Whatever spell you did, you're countering, right? Because you're not acting. Your mental actions and actual physical actions in that system are not consistent with the bell you rang and ritual. So it stops the process. So you don't get less luck that you think it's not working because you're working against it. But usually when you start really taking the steps to reframe your behavior, you're doing the ritual work, you get these miraculous coincidences that show you, yeah, you're absolutely in the right place because the bell is ringing. The bell is ringing across all air, across the physical world, your mental world, and the spiritual world. And all of a sudden, things go faster and faster. And you get meet the right people at the right time, or to get a job, or you get accepted to school when you didn't expect to, or the obstacles just melt away.
So when we go to manifest these things that we want or we desire, we send out that frequency or turn that bell up, however we're doing that magically. It comes forth in our life, and then we resist it. I think what happens then? Does it create more chaos? I think it kind of does.
It does. I think so. I mean, everyone thinks they know. I don't mean consequences in a bad way either. Everyone thinks they know they want this and there's no consequences. And it's not the scary consequences that people think, like the Harry Potter, not the Harry Potter, it's more like exorcist consequences. It's not like that. It's more like, if you're doing self-love rituals to build your self-esteem and stuff up, one of the consequences could be that people in your life that hold you back have to be removed. If you're working with spiritual forces, they are going to look at this and say, you need to help. I need to make this happen despite what you consciously think you want, because you asked and it's good. And that does lead to chaos, and it does lead to pain. And it usually works itself out for the better, but it doesn't feel like that way. Because the thing is, no one wants things to change. They don't.
I do. You don't want.
Oh, I do.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. And sometimes that's when the spirits come in and kick you a little bit because you're like getting stuck. Or your holy guardian angel comes in and kicks you because you're getting stuck. But the thing is, most people don't. Our subconscious mind doesn't like change. Because anything that is changing means you have to pay attention. Because we work on rote. We work, as Anton Wilson will say, most people are sleeping or sleepwalking. Because it's much easier, it's less energy to not have to pay attention, not to think. That's easy. Like, as you keep doing the magic stuff, it's so much energy to keep thinking because you have to keep analyzing. Yeah. You have to keep thinking, you have to keep analyzing, keep refining, and constantly rejoin the boundaries of where you're at.
Yeah. And the thing too is like when I changed my environment, because I started realizing, okay, environment will, like you talk about the things that hold you back. Whether it's environment or people or whatever, there's an energy to it. And, if you call for change, the universe is like, okay, I'm going to change. But all that stuff you built in that area right there, it might go away. You might have to start over. There might be some uncomfort. There might be some chaos.
Right. Nobody wants to hear that, right? That the first act of creation is an act of destruction. But it always is. Things, when you're asking to get something new, things can't stay the same.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, so the job thing, right? That's a classic example. You ask for a job, okay, you get a job. Your life is going to change. You're going to have whole new people in your life. That's a whole new set of things. You're going to have to learn new things constantly. Like if you get a new partner in your life's fundamentally going to change.
Right.
People who are in your life might not be there. They might exit stage left because they're no longer part of the drama. But we don't want to accept the loss. Everyone loves the results. They love the results, but for the results to actually happen, it's not like one thing is not interconnected to everything else. Like, these stories have to change, and the aspects of the stories that are unexpected have to change with it. So the stronger you can make that internal reality be the reality, the more ripples there could be in external reality, whether you like it or not. Once you ring the bell, if it's loud enough, it can be unpredictable.
Yeah, right.
And it's unpredictable because most people don't want to accept that what they were asking for requires multiple changes. and it requires things to change on multiple areas of their life, not just one. And they think a job spell is just a job spell, but it never is. A job spell also probably has to change self-esteem. You might have to change other things. There's a whole bunch of things that ripple change, and then it kind of happens, you know. But you might have to get a new. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish your sentence there. Might have to get a new.
I was going to say you might have to meet somebody new. Like, so you might think your job spell isn't working, and you start meeting a whole new bunch of people, and then all of a sudden that leads somewhere.
Right. Exactly. But the thing is, whether it's jobs, relationships, and I know we got to wrap this up because the next show's coming on, but I'd love to have you back. But
I'd love to come back. Yeah.
Whether it's any of this stuff, I can attest, and I'm sure you can too, that if you do the magic, you go through the chaos or whatever, when you get on the other end, you're like, damn, I'm glad I did that. That it's almost like it's a whole other kind of freedom, because now that chaos and change and all this other stuff, the uncomfort, the unpredictability, the uncertainty, it loses its power over you because you understand it. And that's another version of freedom, I think.
It is. You become okay with uncertainty, or okay with change. And once you start becoming more and more okay with change, you become more free to actually change and change everything around you.
Man, this has been a deep conversation. We got to have you back. Since you came on, I want to make sure that we, promote what you're doing, get behind what you're doing, because I think you're doing great work. I know you're doing some classes, if you want to talk about that too.
Yeah, I run courses by Teachable, which is results over image, and we kind of run those Teachable classes out of our center, which is the WujiZen.ca's Healing Center, and it's in Toronto. It's a physical location in Toronto, and we're going to open up a store there too, a full kind of occulty store and apothecary store, and we kind of do all our recording out of the center. And once COVID's done, which it's not in Toronto yet, everyone in the States, you're a little luckier. COVID's kind of winding down, but it's not done yet in Toronto. But once it's done, all the classes will be in person and online. So the courses there are the recorded parts of that, but we always run them in person, actually in person and online.
Fantastic. And thanks again for coming on. We'll do this again. It was a great discussion. I loved it, man.
Thanks for having me on. I'd love to come back.
You guys, The Secret Teachings is up next with Ryan Gable. We'll be back tomorrow night for Open Line, same time, same channel here, you guys. Good night. Sweet dreams.
Thanks for having me on.